Give her credit.
She's trying something.
Do something, even if it's wrong. That's what my dad's always taught me.
Well, she's trying something, but it's just not working. Connie Young is just too fierce a competitor and just has too much experience.
And speed. World record holder, and she set a world record here at this track last year. There's Connie Young in the back. Lucy Tyler looks like she's just going to lead her out. This could make for a fast time, but Connie Young, rather than waiting for the home stretch, goes right over the top in the backstretch and going for a time trial of her own, so to speak, as Connie Young just obliterates Lucy Tyler in the middle of the backstretch, wins convincingly. An 11.3 second time, very, very fast 200-meter time for Connie Young, winning her 6th gold medal. She's 6 for 6 this year in the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix. Another look at her. Here they are in the backstretch. Connie Young just entering the back straightaway, drives right over the top.
I think we are seeing Connie Young really on a training ride. She is here trying to see how strong, how fast, what her fitness level is at this point. And she's just driving all the way to the line. You can see her muscling her bike, and she's sprinting harder in this one than she has in some of those preliminary heats that she's done.
An 11.3 second 200-meter time. That's world class, although you can't set a time trial record in match sprint competition. Connie Young wins another gold medal in the Sundance Grand Prix. During the winter of '88, Bonnie Blair enthralled Americans everywhere by taking gold and bronze in the women's speed skating competition in the Calgary Olympics. Only months later in Hilversum, she would outclass the world in the 1989 championships. For many athletes, these achievements would be enough to hang a career on, but not so Bonnie Blair.
Riding on the track is something I've wanted to do for quite a few years. I guess I just never really felt there was a correct timing. You know, like before the Olympics, I just really wanted to concentrate on the skating. Last summer, right after the Olympics, I was like in a whirlwind and going here and going there and just really too busy. And, you know, this summer I thought, hey, now's the time that I think it's time to see what's going on and try it out. It's going to be a change, a new experience. Every day is going to be exciting, new and challenging, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Cycling and skating have long been associated as crossover sports, but only a few, like Eric Heiden, Connie Young, and Bonnie's teammate Nick Tomitz, have been able to make successful transitions. As a junior, she won titles in both the match sprint and the individual pursuit. And she is a gutsy rider. She leads the series 1-0 right now. She has taken a victory over Bonnie Blair as they start off slowly around the track. And Jane Eickhoff, this youngster, just knows no fear. She hasn't backed off from anything. The only races that she has not scored points in for the overall standings in this 7-race series are men's events.
I was wondering where you were leading to, Brian, and that's the truth, because that's the only place she hasn't.
And who's to say? I think the only reason she hasn't ridden men's events is because they won't give her any points for men's races. Otherwise, she'd be right in there.
That's right. Tough rider.
She really is. And Bonnie Blair, now Bonnie has come off of her skates and onto a bicycle as a competitor for the first time this season. She's used cycling as a training counterpart, as a training complement to her skating, as many skaters do, as many cyclists do. The sports cross over well. But this is her first serious competition, and the flaw in her program right now, I think, is she doesn't have the snap. She has kind of that skater's pacing speed, even though she is a sprint world champion and a sprint gold medalist.
Yes.
On skates.
Right. But she's been working quite a bit with Connie Young.
She's a quick study.
She is a quick.
She's making progress.
Well, anytime you have a world-class athlete will come into a sport like cycling, and with some coaching.
And her mentor is Connie Young.
Right,
absolutely. They don't come any better.
She will progress very quickly. We've seen from some of her earlier rides that she's a little bit tentative. She's not quite sure of all the moves. This is actually only her 3rd time racing on the track in an actual competition.
And it takes a while to learn how to race.
Well,
on a velodrome.
Takes
to learn
years.
The tactics. And here she is against Jane Eichhoff, a veteran at age 18. Now Bonnie Blair making a run at the back wheel, trying to force Jane Eichhoff up to speed. The rear rider has to get the front rider moving in order to take advantage of that draft and slingshot. Bonnie Blair accelerating, but there you can see how quickly Jane Eichhoff accelerates right next to her and goes back to the control position, dives down the banking, heading for the straightaway, only 50 yards to go, and she's got it. 2 straight rides. Jane Eichhoff, good speed, superior tactics, takes the bronze medal in 2 straight rides over Olympic skating champion Bonnie Blair. Finals for men and women, and it's ladies first. The matchup, Mindy Mayfield of Team Lycra and Elaine Gomez from Austin, Texas, Team Marinoni. It was Mindy Mayfield that led early, but Elaine Gomez fought back from behind in the second half of the race to take her first gold medal in the individual pursuit of the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix. And on the men's side, Great Britain's Sean Wallace of Wheatie Schwinn against New Zealand's Gary Anderson. It was Sean Wallace start to finish, Thomas Brent.
That's right, Sean Wallace, 27 from Southampton, England, showed just a glimpse of his versatility. Here he is dominating this competition, coming around and actually catching his competitor here. It's the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix today.
Sean Wallace went on for a time, and a very fast time here, after a great performance in the Core Stakes Pro Championship, 75 miles on the road. Here he goes 2.5 miles on the track to take his gold medal. We had a chance to talk to him after his win here at Colorado Springs. Sean, first of all, congratulations. A job well done. Start to finish victory, and a fast one, too, I might add. A good time. You're very versatile. You know, you ride everything, including half of a 156-mile road race last week. That's really the mark of what you've done so far in the Sundance Tour.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'd like to think of myself as a versatile rider. I feel if you're a good bike rider, you should be able to do a lot of different events. It's all cycling. It's slightly different, but perhaps that's one of the keys to my success.
How important is you to win the overall title in the Sundance Juice Sparkler Tour? That seems to be what you're aiming for.
Yeah, for me it's very important because we've had plenty of track cycling in this country, but there's never been a series like the Sundance Juice Sparkler Series that's had an overall title, and the winner of it hopefully will be undisputed best track rider in the country, so that's what I aim for.
Sean, congratulations and thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
And right now it's time for our Irish Spring Race of the Day. That was the men's Kieran final, where the Dino Clubs Gustavo Ferris pulled an upset over the favorite duo of Michelle Vartan and Gibby Hatton to take the men's Kieran final. That's our Irish Spring Race of the Day. Now let's take a look at some of the results of the other events. In the men's sprint, Ken Carpenter and Scott Berryman dueled it out, with Carpenter getting the gold. Mark Garrett and Mark Gorski went to 3 rides. Mark Garrett's third ride, a little bit of controversy with a somewhat radical move coming out of the final turn. He throws a little hook at Mark Gorski, but the officials ruled that it was not serious enough to warrant a re-ride or a reversal of the result. So Mark Garrett holds on for bronze medal in the men's match sprint competition. In the women's results, Connie Young continues her domination. Lucy Tyler in the gold medal final takes the silver, and Janie Eichhoff, riding everything, takes the bronze. In the missing out, the final results, there's Jane Eichhoff again over Karen Bliss and Lucy Tyler. The youngster really doing well overall. In the Kieran, there it is, Gustavo Ferris, Mario Pons, the 1-2 punch, Gibby Hatton of Wheatie Schwinn down in third spot. And in the pursuit final, Englishman Sean Wallace getting the best of New Zealand's Gary Anderson, Chris Gato and Jonas Carney, a junior on his way to Moscow, battling it out for the bronze. And in the women's pursuit, Elaine Gomez, Go-Go, takes the gold medal over Mindy Mayfield, Bunky Bankaitis Davis, and Lucy Tyler for the bronze medal. So, Thomas Pren, we really had a lot of exciting action here today. That Kieran final was a great one. And in the men's match sprint, the return of the big man, Ken Carpenter, and he really showed us some power and some speed here today.
That's right. You know, we see that his racing over in Europe hasn't affected him at all. He's coming back even stronger. Very consistent rides by him. And it's just been a really exciting series of races here. We see Sean Wallace just continuing on the top, and it shows you just the tremendous versatility that this rider has. Just last week we saw him maybe on ESPN.
After 6 stops across the country, we find ourselves in little Trexlertown, Pennsylvania, in the beautiful Lehigh Valley for the culmination of America's only nationwide series of track cycling. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Drever, and with me, as usual, is Thomas Pren, and joining us this week, former Olympic champion Mark Gorski. And what we're seeing in the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix is very tight competition in the series overall. On the women's side, a tremendously tight race, but on the men's side, practically a runaway. First, the women, Thomas Pren, and we have young Janie Eickhoff, who's led from the start, being challenged by Lucy Tyler.
That's right. It's so tight, Brian, that we're not going to be able to determine the overall champion until the final event.
And on the men's side, Mark Gorski, Sean Wallace really has been a walkaway, a runaway.
Well, his all-around ability is really well suited for the Sundance series, and he's dominated so far.
So Sean Wallace leading the men's division, and Jane Eickhoff and Lucy Tyler battling it out for the women. And one of the featured events of the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix, of course, is the match sprints. Now, on the women's side, we have a little bit of an unusual situation this week. Renee Duprell and Julie Spade of Australia will face each other, Thomas.
That's right. Connie Young has had an unfortunate accident, or her family has had a loss of a family loved one, and she's not going to be here. But it's going to really give us a tremendous final for the women.
On the men's side, Mark Gorski, you've raced against both these men. They have been dominant thus far in the series, and they've been dodging each other from circumstances, if you will. But here they are in the final together, Kurt Harnett and Ken Carpenter.
I think we're going to have our most interesting final so far because we're well into the season now. They're both at prime form. So it's going to be a real battle between those two.
In fact, Ken Carpenter had a comment about racing against his nemesis, Kurt Harnett, the big Canadian.
I feel up for it, and I feel good. I have a unique situation that I feel like I'm kind of the underdog. In our last 2 outings, Kurt rode better than I did, and he came out the winner. So, you know, everybody likes to be the underdog, and that takes the pressure off me. And I think it's going to be a typical Ken Carpenter and Kurt Harnett match where it's just get to the front and put the hammer down. So I'm looking forward to it.
So we're looking forward to the match sprint final. We also have a lot of other events, including the women's pursuit. That's going to be a very exciting race, and one that could have a very big bearing on the outcome in the overall series for the women.
It could. Every single point that the women receive at this point is very critical.
And in the men's pursuit side, Sean Wallace, who has won virtually every event, he set a track record in qualifying out here, so his performance is something we'll have to look forward to.
Wally has just ridden unbelievably. He seems to be getting faster as the year goes on. He's been very impressive.
So some of the exciting events that we will be also seeing include the Kieran, which I have to say is my personal favorite, and we've heard that it's the favorite of many of you out there as well. So we have lots of races coming up. Lehigh County Velodrome opened in 1975, had its first full season in 1976. 1/3 of a kilometer around, 28-degree banking at its steepest point, located just outside Allentown, Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. Beautiful day for bike racing here today. Nice and dry, no rain that has characterized the weather in the Northeast for the last few weeks and even months. A sunny day, virtually perfect conditions. A little bit breezy, though. That might be a factor. Getting set for the men's sprint final here at Trexlertown, Pennsylvania. And it's the battle of the big men, if you will. Our finalists in the match sprint. 3-lap race. They draw for their position on the track before the start, and the rider at the bottom, number 1, leads the first full lap at a walking pace unless he's voluntarily overtaken by the other. The race is timed for the final 200 meters, generally for comparison purposes, fast race, slow race, but it's the first rider across the line that wins, although you must defeat your opponent twice. It's a best-of-3 series. Ken Carpenter at the trackside right there, riding for the Celestial Seasonings team. Mark Gorski, tell us about this man.
Well, he qualified with 10:82, which is a very good time, and I think if he can get in front of Kurt, the wind is a tailwind down the home straight, the final 50 meters. If he can take the lead and hit the home straight first, I think he could possibly hold off Kurt.
Kurt Harnett, however, is a very intimidating rider. We've seen that, Thomas Pren. He's not afraid of physical contact, a former hockey player, very muscular in his upper body, although Ken Carpenter at 6'4", 225 pounds, I mean, these are big men, and this could get physical.
That's right. In fact, Kurt, in one of the earlier rounds, ended up taking a couple spokes out of one of his opponent's wheels during the sprint. So these guys aren't afraid to mix it up.
I think really, Mark, you hit on it a little bit, that Ken Carpenter, pure speed, might have the advantage, but he's going to have to ride tactically superb in order to defeat Kurt Harnett, who who's very, very experienced.
Well, Ken doesn't like the physical contact nearly as much as Kurt. Kurt likes to get a little rowdy out there, and I actually think that Kurt has a little more speed than Ken. Kurt qualified in 10.70, a new track record. Kurt is really on the top of the game. I've talked to him recently, and I've tried to tell Kurt, hey, he's got to be thinking about the East Germans and Russians and be looking to really the best in the world, because he's one of the best in the world right now.
He's focused his season on match sprinting this year. In previous years, he has been a kilometer time trial rider, earned a silver medal in the Olympic Games in 1984, where you got your gold medal, Mark, in the match sprint. And Kurt, I think, though, well, he's a good kilometer rider. Let's face it, you don't get a silver medal in the Olympics if you're not. But I think he really has found his place in match sprinting.
I think he's a better sprinter than he was a kilometer rider, and the fact that he's not riding the kilo this year has made a big difference in the sprints for him. And he's been so sharp this year. He didn't make the final in the first Sundance event in Houston, but he's made the final every time he's ridden since then.
Now, they've finished the first lap, and at this point, if Ken Carpenter wanted not to be in the front position, he could have slowed down and maybe even stopped in an effort to force Kurt around to the front. But it appears as though Ken is satisfied with the front position and appears to want to use that front to control the race, Thomas.
Yeah, and we know both of these riders like long sprints, long drawn-out razor sprints where they accelerate all the way through the sprint. So again, that's going to make for a very even matchup.
Well, this is a real key part of the race right here. Ken is very concerned about keeping the front. He's watching constantly as he's going through this banking. You can see his head turn. He definitely wants the front right from this point in the race all the way to the finish.
Well, he commented that it was probably going to be a typical Ken Carpenter, Kurt Harnett sprint with the man at the front trying to control the race and just going all the way to the line. They're at one lap to go, and now we're going to see it. Ken Carpenter leading Kurt Harnett, and now Harnett with a little bump tries to come by, but Carpenter's able to hold him off. They're just about even down the backstretch. Now Carpenter moves into a bike length lead as they go into the final turn, 100 meters to go, time running. Carpenter with the lead, Harnett trying to make a run at him, but Ken Carpenter, the big American riding for Celestial Seasoning, gets the nod on this first race in the best of three series from the front. So next time they'll reverse positions. Kurt Harnett will get his chance at the front, but this time it was Ken Carpenter. Let's take another look at it, Mark.
I have to say, Ken Carpenter rode a beautiful race right here. He was the physical one. He held off Kurt Harnett going down the backstretch. He took control of the race, and he was very dominant in this race right here. There was no way Kurt was going to get around coming out of that last corner. Ken is just too fast from the last corner to the finish line.
There's the drag race, and Ken Carpenter, right of the screen, getting the best of it. It's close at the line, but a half a bike length is a long way. Ken Carpenter takes the lead, 1-0 in this best of three for the match sprint gold. Next up, the women's sprint final and what could be the deciding ride for the gold medal here in the last event of the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix. Here's the result of the first ride. Renee Duprell, Team Weight Watchers in the pink jersey in the front, and Julie Spate from Australia trying to come around her, but Renee Duprell just a little too much at the line. The length of a wheel, the margin of victory, so she leads 1-0 over Julie Spate. Now, Julie right here, riding for Foster's Lager, a very appropriate sponsor for an Australian, has to win this ride in order to stay alive. Renee Duprell has the confidence factor of leading 1-0. She can afford to lose one and still come back. It's a best of three series between these two. Julie Spate being pushed off first. They have reversed their start position from the first ride. They draw for position for the first ride, reverse for the second, and if there's a third ride, they'll draw again. The leading rider, in this case Julie Spate, has to lead that first lap at a minimum of walking pace unless Renee overtakes her. And it looks like Julie's trying to run away with this race almost from the beginning. They're rolling along pretty briskly here, Mark, for the first lap of a match sprint.
Well, they really are. You know, Julie doesn't seem to have fully recovered from the accident she had earlier this year. She doesn't seem to be utilizing her upper body very much in the final 200 meters of the sprint. Renee is riding very well right now. I think she's going up against Julie when Julie really isn't quite on the top of her form yet, as she was at the Olympics last fall when she was 5th place.
Julie Spate, 5th in the Olympics. Renee Duprell, runner-up to Connie Young in the U.S. Olympic trials, so she didn't get a chance to make that trip. And the injury that Mark's referring to is a broken collarbone. We've mentioned it many times on the series. Her collarbone is actually pinned together with a plate of titanium and 6 screws.
Now, what she should probably do in this event is because she really can't use her upper body, is to try and go for a longer sprint or wind it out a little bit more so she doesn't have to use that upper body.
It looks like that's what she's trying to do right here. She's trying to keep it wound up.
Sudden movements are painful. She's admitted that several times, and pulling, wrenching on the bars with her hands and arms causes her some pain in that shoulder. So Julie Spate leading briskly the first 2 laps. The pace will get even more brisk as we head into the final lap here of the bell. They are now on the backstretch with a little less than a half lap to go as they go into the final turn. Julie Spate leading. Renee Duprel starting to make a run, passing in the middle of the turn, obviously moving much faster. Julie Spate continues her acceleration, but Renee Duprel able to come all the way around even in the turn. 12.75 seconds, not a particularly fast time. Julie Spate congratulating Renee Duprel, Team Weight Watchers there, number 9, for her victory, a gold medal in the finals of the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix. Let's take another look at it. Here's Renee Duprel coming around in the middle of the turn, Mark.
Well, Renee was impressive coming over the top. You know, Julie, I think, made a common mistake of really not rolling it up, not really getting up to speed down the backstretch. And even though she was in the lead position, she really was not in control. And Renee was able to run hard at her into the corner. And even though she was passing through the corner, she got by pretty easily, I thought.
So Renee Duprel takes the gold medal in our match sprint final for women here in Trexlertown. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more from the Sundance Grand Prix of Cycling on ESPN. The Miss and Out final, a very unusual kind of race that marks the Sundance Juice Sparkler Grand Prix. It is a race of attrition. Brian Drever, Thomas Pren, Mark Gorski, and a cast of what was dozens is now down to a dozen or so. The last rider on each lap is pulled out of the race. They go down to the final 3. They get a bell and a sprint for first, second, and third. We join the race in progress because they're down to about a dozen riders or so. We started out with nearly 30. The men's missing out. Bell ringing means that there's a special lap prize for the first rider over the line, but it's the last rider over the line who comes out. And this time it's number 71, John Walsh from Torrance, California, the Montrose cycling team. So one less rider is in the field, and we're seeing now what amounts to the survivors, Thomas, and from these survivors will come the winners.
Yeah. Where we usually see guys get into trouble is they get down on the pole line and all the riders in the back sweep up around, and then the guy maybe 10 back ends up getting caught. But that was a Team Leica rider that time that was pulled out.
It was Aaron Hartwell, who has been a real factor in a number of the races. Good kilometer rider, and he started doing a little bit of sprinting as well, but he was not fast enough to stay in the missing out in this missing out final. Mark Gorski now is a match sprinter. This is not the kind of race you really want to get into out there, but they are fun. I know you've ridden a few.
I'm having fun watching Gibby Hatton play games with the last guy on the pack each lap around there. It's more interesting to watch the back of the pack that are missing out, because you get some of the crafty sprinters, Gil Hatton or Paul Swift, Bobby Livingston, who kind of get somebody on their wheel coming down the home straight and just play with them to control somebody.
No, looks like Gibby's kind of run out of gas, though, back there in the back, and he's going to be eliminated this time. And the rest of the riders are still in there. They call this race Devil Take the Hindmost, because sometimes a rider at the back of the field will just try to beat one other rider. And we have a special spy in the sky, if you will, Nelson Vales. And there he is with a camera. There's his view, I should say, because he's riding at the back of the field with a camera mounted on his helmet. So he's giving us a good look. You can see the rider sweeps around to the outside. The trouble spot is left of the screen, down at the bottom.
That's what I was talking about, Brian. That rider at the bottom thinks he's in fine position because he's maybe in third place. But then coming around that last corner, all the riders sweep up the track, and he gets stuck down there.
Well, it was Paul Swift that got called out. He was the rider at the bottom.
Let's see if that happens again.
Nelson Vales stuck in the back of the field there, giving us a good view. Now on the outside, you can see the outside sweeps by, and the Weedy Schwinn rider is the one that gets pulled out. And that's Thomas Craven who comes out of there.
The dilemma of the missing out is by staying down low, you're protected by the wind. And you get outside, you're out in the wind more, and you use a lot more energy. So the riders on the bottom like to stay down there because they're doing a lot less work.
And we've got another Schwinn rider in trouble at the back there. It's Don Wallace.
It looks like
no, it's going to be
Wallace stays in.
Yoshimatsu.
Number 8. I think it was Manuel Yoshimatsu, number 85, who got squeezed out on the outside there. Bronze medal in the Olympic Games in 1984 in the points race, the only mass start event on the track in the Olympics. So Yoshimatsu is out, and now we're down to 6 riders. At the back, playing the devil, is a man who's suited to that role, Michelle Barton of Wheatie Schwinn. He sweeps around the outside, and his victim, I think, is number 78, Graham Miller. Yoshimatsu actually is still...
No, they're calling Michelle Vartan out because I think he must have gone underneath on the inside of the track or something.
Okay, Barton was out on the last lap, so he is now withdrawn from the race. Sometimes it's difficult to communicate to the riders whether they are out or not. In this case, it's going to be Gene Samuel who sweeps up out of this picture and is eliminated way on the outside. You can't even see him. He's swung up to the top of the track. We're down to 5 riders now. 5 riders are left. 2 more will be eliminated. The final 3 will get a sprint for first, second, and third. Let's see who's in trouble this time. Trying to get around the outside, but it's again down on the bottom, inside, in trouble. Jim Pollitt, number 69 of Team Lycra, gets squeezed out of the back there. There he is, far right of the screen, sitting up.
Only one more rider to come out now.
Sean Wallace of Wheatie Schwinn, right in the middle. He has been very successful in these missing outs, has scored a lot of his points, and leads the series right now. An example of his all-round ability. Now the riders are coming into the home stretch, getting squeezed out the back.
Now it's Yoshimatsu.
Yoshimatsu this time, number 85. It was Vartan who was out before. And the riders that we have left in the race right now include Sean Wallace of Wheatie Schwinn, Bobby Livingston of, no, that's Brian McDonough of Team Lycra, and Graham Miller of IME. Miller is from New Zealand. He's the 3rd rider on the track right now.
We have a lot of these riders coming up from down under, riding our summer track series here.
So 1 lap to go right now. Sean Wallace at the front.
Interestingly, Brian McDonough and Sean Wallace rode the pursuit earlier today. I would think they might be a little tired, but McDonough maybe will try and get around Wallace here coming down the final home straight.
Graham Miller, number 78, is the 3rd rider in the line. Brian McDonough in the middle is the yellow and black shorts. Sean Wallace leading it out for Wheatie Schwinn. Wallace very fast. McDonough tries to go underneath, but doesn't find any room, and Wallace is too fast anyway. Brian McDonough getting 2nd. Sean Wallace the winner. Graham Miller from New Zealand takes the 3rd place, just ahead of Nelson Vales, our cameraman there. For the missing out final. Sean Wallace adds another 5 points to his already dominant total for the series lead. Here's the backstretch with Sean Wallace in the lead, Thomas, and nobody's going to get around him. Let's take a look at how it happens.
Yeah, you just see the incredible versatility of this rider. Look at that. Now you see, tries to come on the inside, does not have the room at all, and that's just, the race is over at that point. But Sean Wallace, tremendous overall rider. Look at that victory.
Working the bike all the way to the line. Another 5 points added to his total. This is going to be the series champion, Sean Wallace, winner of the men's missing out. We're getting set now for the men's Keirin final here at the Lehigh County Velodrome in Trexlertown. The last of these rock'em sock'em affairs. The 8 finalists are on the track, but one man has figured in every Keirin race in the Sundance Grand Prix, Gibby Hatton. Gilbert Gibby Hatton has been cycling competitively since the age of 9. In the 23 years that have made up his career, he's become one of the more notable figures in American cycling. His longevity has been influenced by his success in the Keirin, an event he dominates not only here, but also in Japan. And he didn't start riding Keirin until 1983.
Believe it or not,
The pressure might be on because in the last 3 Sundance Grand Prix Keirin finals, he has gotten 2nd place. He'd like to finish this series up with a victory. There's our field. Gene Samuel of Trinidad, an excellent performance in the 1984 Olympic Games, 4th place finish. Richard Young, runner-up in the Canadian Championships in the sprint to Kurt Harnett. Dave Bonser from nearby Wind Gap, Pennsylvania, one of the local favorites. Mario Pons, who was the winner of the Keirin final, or actually runner-up to his teammate Gustavo Ferris in Colorado Springs. Nelson Vales, always a threat. Then there's the Hatton-Vartan duo from Wheatie Schwinn and the world professional sprint champion Stephen Pate. That's our lineup, and it is a star-studded field. This is going to be, I think, the best of the Keirin finals we've ever had.
Well, the big difference this week, Brian, is the fact that there's nobody from Team Lycra that made it into the final. I think that's going to affect the racing. I think Gibby and Michelle and maybe Pate will be the guys to beat because they're going to have their way. They're going to have control of the field this week.
Well, they're going to have, I think, some difficulty, Thomas Prent, with Mario Pons, because he has shown himself very aggressive and doesn't seem to play by the rules, if you will. Whatever they set up as a strategy, he goes right around them and tries to do something on his own.
In the previous ones, we've seen in the strategy is the Wheatie Schwinn guys are dropping to the back to try and set something up. And it hasn't worked. So they're not going to do that this time. They're going to go right to the front and try and win it from the front. They're not going to mess around with all this tactical stuff. And I think we'll see that this time.
That was a shot of Pons just a moment ago. There's Gene Samuel. Here's the Bear, Gibby Hatton, the man of the hour, you might say. This is his home track. He's been Rider of the Year here. He lives in nearby Breiningsville. There's Stephen Pate in the rainbow jersey. He'll be easy to spot. Michelle Vartan, Chief, the leader of the pack, they say, of their group anyway. The whole field stretched out. They draw for their position and they line up trackside in single file as a tandem bicycle circles the track here. A lot of times motorcycles are used, but here at the Lehigh County Velodrome, they're not able to put a motorcycle on the track, so they use a tandem bicycle ridden by Jim Alvord and Gary Rollman, two regular performers on solo machines here at the Lehigh County Velodrome, and they've really begun to make a name for themselves locally, at least, as tandem pacers for this Kieran event.
Brian, if I think there's one rider who could be a dark horse in there, it's Richard Young from Canada. He's got the speed to beat Vartan and Hatton, and he seems to be aggressive enough to be able to fight with them. So if I had to pick a dark horse, maybe someone who could sneak in there would be Richard Young.
Now, we do have a camera mounted on the back of the tandem, which will be looking right in. There it is. There's a shot of Nelson Vales, who is in the first position, and a headbutt coming through on the inside.
Right.
Gibby Hatton edges his way to that #1 spot behind the pace bike, and Vartan pulls up right alongside him.
We're going to see those guys getting right to the front. I don't think they want to mess around, and they're going to want to stay right at the front.
There's
right
a good shot of Michelle Vartan looking right into his face. Now, it's early in the race. They'll be coming around 3 laps to go. The tandem will stay on the track until about 1 lap to go, but they'll ring a bell in the middle of the backstretch with 1.5 laps, and at that